It can be really hard to make positive changes in your life when the day-to-day environment that you're in doesn't actually support those changes. My name's Marcus, this is Strong Not Starving, and here we help people create fulfilling, sustainable experiences and practices with food, exercise, and stress management. So although we don't want to get into the habit of waiting for things to be perfect in order to make positive changes, our environment still matters. Where we are, what we're doing, and who we're spending time with. In my 20s, I spent a couple of years as a pro guitar player. I had gone into the health and fitness industry straight out of high school, but I was always playing in bands on the weekends and auditioning for different projects. And in my late 20s, I moved to the UK and auditioned for a band that was kind of a big deal in the UK. Like they were doing full-time tours of the UK, Europe, North America, and rather than just play on the weekends, I suddenly found myself in this position where I was a full-time member of a touring band. I had no idea who this band was before I moved to the UK. And so I auditioned kind of ignorantly. I showed up knowing that it was a full-time gig, not knowing who these guys were, but it kind of worked out and I found myself in this position. And from the outside looking in, did look like a dream job. I had friends that were still playing in bands in Australia, looking at what I was posting on Instagram and saying like, oh my God, like Marcus has done it. Like he's doing it. Travel, excitement, conspicuous success. It looked like the perfect situation, but it actually kind of sucked. Now, don't get me wrong. My bandmates were awesome. And the 90 minutes a day that we spent on stage together were so much fun. But outside of that, the whole lifestyle and everything about that environment was just such a drag for me and just not a good fit. I had no say in my own schedule. Like, I'm not Mick Jagger. I didn't have the pull to be able to decide when to tour, when not to tour, where to go, where not to go. The band owned my schedule. As a working guitar player, you go wherever you're told to go, whenever you're told to go. In many ways, it was the same as having any other job, except your boss could tell you that you need to be in the United States next week, or you need to be in Europe, and you're going to be living out of a suitcase for the next month, which of course comes with the territory, right? I kind of knew what I was signing up for, but until I'd experienced it, I just didn't realize how much that whole thing was just not me. I hated not being in control of my own schedule. I hated being told what to do and not having the kind of autonomy that was making my own decisions about where I spent my time. Constantly arriving in new cities and not knowing where anything was or where good food places were, let alone being able to do some exercise or find a gym or something like that. And I was looking at guys who were doing my job, but were maybe 10 or 15 years older than me, looking at their lifestyle and their health and all that kind of thing and thinking, is that where this is going? No, thank you. God bless them if that's what they want for themselves, but this isn't working out for me. I realized that I hated staying up late. I'm a morning person. I like routine and structure and time to move my body and just think. And I realized there was this massive gap between the reality of the life that I had and the environment that I was in and what I actually needed to be fulfilled and happy and healthy. Of course, every different situation is going to come with its challenges, but I realized for myself that this particular environment had a whole lot of things about it that just ran completely against the grain of what I needed. I had to be really honest with myself and come to terms with the fact that, like, at heart, I'm not an artist or a performer. I have more in common with athletes and counselors and therapists and teachers than I do with people who are standing on stages every night. That was hard to admit, given that I'd spent my whole childhood and teenage years looking at rock stars and thinking, oh my God, I wish I was like one of them. So in the pursuit of who I thought I had to be and what I thought would make me happy and what I thought I wanted, I had worked myself into an environment that was just not good for me. And for myself, coming to terms with the reality of what being a pro guitar player was and what that meant for me was brutal. I was so afraid of what people would think if I quit, because this wasn't just a job that I'd worked for. It had become part of my identity. People knew me as this guy. People admired me for having this job and being this guy. I was so afraid of what people would think and who would I be without that? And when I finally did quit that job, I felt like I was starting over again from the very bottom, which on a whole other level was really scary because I was at an age where all of my friends had graduated from university with like PhDs and they were establishing careers and some of them were starting families and doing all this stuff. And I felt like, wow, here I am again, starting from scratch. But the alternative was just to stay somewhere that wasn't working out and was never going to work out for me as a long-term situation. The first job I had after quitting that band was mopping floors in a small gym. If there was anything that was going to make me feel like I was starting from the bottom again, that was it. It was really fucking hard. But something that did make it at least a little bit easier was holding on to that clarity around, I know that where I've been is not for me. I know that I can't stay there. And also, it wasn't really starting from the start because I was starting from a new place with all the accumulated experience and wisdom I'd had from the journey so far. No matter where you're at, no one can take that from you. No one can take away the wisdom and experience you've gained from the journey so far. You can't lose that. So even if sometimes it feels like you're getting out of one situation or removing yourself from one environment and starting from scratch in another one, you're not really starting from scratch. Holding on to that was really important for me as I was navigating these changes. And of course, I've been talking about a career move here, but I also know what it's like to end long-term relationships that just were not a good fit and weren't working out. Ending relationships that aren't a good fit, that's really hard. And it's not something to be taken lightly. And I'm definitely not saying right now that if you have the tiniest bit of doubt, you should just go and blow up your life. Absolutely not. But if your environment isn't in alignment with where you want to go, and you're making every effort to put in work and make some positive changes, but things in your environment just keep holding you back, that's something worth thinking about. And yeah, it's scary, but it's worth taking seriously, and it's worth considering what your options might be, even if the best of them is mopping floors in a small gym. And if you want to know what it might be like to be surrounded by some really great people on your journey, check out the Strong Not Starving community. There are links and info in the episode description. So like I said, this doesn't mean you have to blow up your life, but your environment is important. We might not have absolute control over everything in our environments and absolute control over every single one of the elements involved in our situation, but we have to ask, where do I have influence? What can I change? Even if that feels a bit scary, or even if it feels very scary. I know it was scary for me, but I do not regret it at all. There were hard moments when I doubted myself while making these changes, while creating the kind of environment that's more in alignment with me and who I am. Of course, there were moments of doubt, but it was worth it. 100%. My name's Marcus. This was Strong Not Starving. See you next time.